Welcome to A Year of War and Peace. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. A Year of War and Peace is a daily, year-long, chapter-by-chapter reading of and meditation on Leo Tolstoy's epic novel, War and Peace. In these videos and podcasts, you'll be treated to a free reading of one chapter per day of the novel, plus a reflective essay I've written individually tailored to that day's chapter. These readings are offered for free, though if you'd like to support me, you can do so in one of three ways. First, you could purchase my ebook, A Year of War and Peace. It features the entire novel, plus all of my reflective essays, and it's only $2.99 on Amazon.com. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/Brian E. Denton. If you sign up there, you'll receive a sonnet once a month, plus a link to an ebook of my collected sonnets. Finally, if you like, you can make a one-time donation to my PayPal account. The email there is brianedenton@gmail.com. You can also use that email to contact me. I'd be happy to hear from you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's reading and reflection is on Chapter 51. Chapter 51. They all separated, but, except Anatoly, who fell asleep as soon as he got into bed, all kept awake a long time that night. Is he really going to be my husband, this stranger who is so kind? Yes, kind, that is the chief thing, thought Princess Mary. And fear, which she had seldom experienced, came upon her. She feared to look round. It seemed to her that someone was there standing behind the screen in the dark corner. And this someone was he, the devil. And he was also this man with the white forehead, black eyebrows, and red lips. She rang for her maid and asked her to sleep in her room. Mademoiselle Bourrienne walked up and down the conservatory for a long time that evening, vainly expecting someone, now smiling at someone, now working herself up to tears with the imaginary words of her pauvre mère, rebuking her for her fall. The little princess grumbled to her maid that her bed was badly made. She could not lie either on her face or on her side. Every position was awkward and uncomfortable, and every burden oppressed her now more and more, because Anatoly's presence had vividly recalled to her the time when she was not like that, and when everything was light and gay. She sat in an armchair in her dressing jacket and nightcap, and Katy, sleepy and disheveled, beat and turned the heavy feather bed for the third time, muttering to herself. "I told you it was all lumps and holes," the little princess repeated. "I should be glad enough to fall asleep, so it's not my fault." And her voice quivered like that of a child about to cry. The old prince did not sleep either. Tikhon, half asleep, heard him pacing angrily about and snorting. The old prince felt as though he had been insulted through his daughter. The insult was the more pointed because it concerned not himself, but another, his daughter, whom he loved more than himself. He kept telling himself that he would consider the whole matter and decide what was right and how he should act, but instead of that, he only excited himself more and more. The first man that turns up, she forgets her father and everything else, runs upstairs and does up her hair and wags her tail and is unlike herself, glad to throw her father over. And she knew I should notice it. I don't see that idiot had only eyes for Bourrienne. I shall have to get rid of her. And how is it she has not pride enough to see it? If she has no pride for herself, she might at least have some for my sake. She must be shown that that blockhead thinks nothing of her, and only of Bourrienne. No, she has no pride, but I'll let her see. The old prince knew that if he told his daughter she was making a mistake and that Anatoly meant to flirt with Mademoiselle Bourrienne, Princess Mary's self-esteem would be wounded, and his point, not to be parted from her, would be gained. So pacifying himself with this thought, he called Tikhon and began to undress. What the devil brought them here, thought he, while Tikhon was putting the nightshirt over his dried-up old body and gray-haired chest. I never invited them. They came to disturb my life, and there's not much of it left. Devil take them, he muttered, while his head was still covered by the shirt. Tikhon knew his master's habit of sometimes thinking aloud, and therefore met with unaltered looks the angrily inquisitive expression of the face that emerged from the shirt. "Gone to bed?" asked the prince. Tikhon, like all good valets, instinctively knew the direction of his master's thoughts. He guessed that the question referred to Prince Vasily and his son. "They'll have gone to bed and put out their lights, your excellency." "No good, no good," said the prince rapidly, and thrusting his feet into his slippers and his arms into the sleeves of his dressing gown, he went to the couch on which he slept. Though no words had passed between Anatoly and Mademoiselle Bourrienne, they quite understood one another as to the first part of their romance, up to the appearance of the pauvre mère, They understood that they had much to say to one another in private, and so they had been seeking an opportunity since morning to meet one another alone. When Princess Mary went to her father's room at the usual hour, Mademoiselle Bourienne and Anatole met in the conservatory. Princess Mary went to the door of the study with special trepidation. It seemed to her that not only did everybody know that her fate would be decided that day, but that she also knew what she thought about it. She read this in Tikhon's face, and in that of Prince Vasili's valet, who made her a low bow when she met with him in the corridor carrying hot water. The old prince was very affectionate and careful in his treatment of his daughter that morning. Princess Mary well knew this painstaking expression of her father's. His face wore that expression when his dry hands clenched with vexation at her not understanding a sum in arithmetic. When rising from his chair, he would walk away from her, repeating in a low voice the same words several times over. He came to the point at once, treating her ceremoniously. "I have a proposition made me concerning you," he said with an unnatural smile. "I expect you have guessed that Prince Vasily has not come and brought his pupil with him." For some reason, Prince Bolkonsky referred to Anatoly as a pupil. This guy. "For the sake of my beautiful eyes. Last night a proposition was made me on your account, and, as you know my principles, I refer it to you." "How am I to understand you, mon père?" said the princess, growing pale and then blushing. "How understand me?" cried her father angrily. "Prince Vasily finds you to his taste as a daughter-in-law, and makes a proposal to you on his pupil's behalf. That's how it's to be understood." "How to understand? And I ask you." "I do not know what you think, father," whispered the princess. "I? What of me? Leave me out of the question. I'm not the one getting married. What about you? That's what I want to know." The princess saw that her father regarded the matter with disapproval, but at that moment the thought occurred to her that her fate would be decided now or never. She lowered her eyes so as not to see the gaze under which she felt that she could not think, but would only be able to submit from habit, and said, "I only wish to do your will, but if I had to express my own desire—" She had no time to finish. The old prince interrupted her. "That's admirable," he shouted. "He will take you and your dowry and take Mademoiselle Bourienne into the bargain. She'll be the wife, while you—" The prince stopped. He saw the effect these words had produced on his daughter. She lowered her head and was ready to burst into tears. Now then, I'm only joking," he said. "Remember this, princess. I hold to the principle that a maiden has a full right to choose. I give you freedom. Only remember that your life's happiness depends on your decision. Never mind me." "But I don't know, father." "There's no need to talk. He receives his orders and will marry you or anybody, but you are free to choose. Go to your room, think it over, and come back in an hour and tell me in his presence, yes or no. I know you will pray over it. Well, pray if you like, but you had better think it over. Go! Yes or no, yes or no, yes or no." He still shouted when the princess, as if lost in a fog, had already staggered out of the study. Her fate was decided and happily decided. But what her father had said about Mademoiselle Bourienne was dreadful. It was untrue, to be sure, but still it was terrible, and she could not help thinking of it. She was going straight on through the conservatory, neither seeing nor hearing anything, when suddenly the well-known whispering of Mademoiselle Bourienne aroused her. She raised her eyes, and 2 steps away saw Anatole embracing the Frenchwoman and whispering something to her. With a horrified expression on his handsome face, Anatole looked at Princess Mary, but did not at once take his arm from the waist of Mademoiselle Bourienne, who had not yet seen her. "Who's that? Why, wait a moment," Anatole's face seemed to say. Princess Mary looked at them in silence. She could not understand it. At last, Mademoiselle Bourienne gave a scream and ran away. Anatole bowed to Princess Mary with a gay smile, as if inviting her to join in a laugh at this strange incident, and then shrugging his shoulders, went to the door that led to his own apartments. An hour later, Tikhon came to call Princess Mary to the old prince. He added that Prince Vasily was also there. When Tikhon came to see her, Princess Mary was sitting on the sofa in her room, holding the weeping Mademoiselle Bourienne in her arms and gently stroking her hair. The princess's beautiful eyes, with all their former calm radiance, were looking with tender affection and pity at Mademoiselle Bourienne's pretty face. "No, princess, I have lost your affection forever," said Mademoiselle Bourienne. "Why, I love you more than ever," said Princess Mary, "and I will try to do all I can for your happiness." But you despise me. You who are so pure can never understand being carried away by passion. Oh, only my poor mother." "I quite understand," answered Princess Mary, with a sad smile. "Calm yourself, my dear. I will go to my father," she said, and went out. Prince Vasily, with one leg thrown high over the other, and a snuff-box in his hand, was sitting there with a deep smile of emotion on his face, as if stirred to his heart's core and himself regretting and laughing at his own sensibility when Princess Mary entered. He hurriedly took a pinch of snuff. "Ah, my dear," he began, rising and taking her by both hands. Then, sighing, he added, "My son's fate is in your hands. Decide, my dear, good, gentle Marie, whom I have always loved as a daughter." He drew back, and a real tear appeared in his eye. Snorted Prince Bolkonsky. "The prince is making a proposition for his pupil, his son's name. Do you wish or not to be Prince Anatoly Kuragin's wife? Reply, yes or no," he shouted, "and then I shall reserve the right to state my opinion also. Yes, my opinion, and only my opinion," added Prince Bolkonsky, turning to Prince Vasily, and answering with an imploring look, "Yes or no?" "My desire is never to leave you, father, never to separate my life from yours. I don't wish to marry," she answered positively, glancing at Prince Vasily and at her father with beautiful eyes. "Humbug! Nonsense! Humbug! Humbug! Humbug!" cried Prince Bolkonsky, frowning and taking his daughter's hand. He did not kiss her, but only bending his forehead to hers just touched it, and pressed her hand so that she winced and uttered a cry. Prince Vasily rose. "My dear, I must tell you that this is a moment I shall never, never forget. But, my dear, will you not give us a little hope of touching this heart, so kind and generous? Say perhaps. The future is so long. Say perhaps." "Prince, what I have said is all there is in my heart. I thank you for the honor, and I shall never be your son's wife." "Well, so that's finished, my dear fellow. I'm very glad to have seen you, very glad. Go back to your rooms, princess, go," said the old prince. "Very glad to have seen you," repeated he, embracing Prince Vasily. "My vocation is a different one," thought Princess Mary. "My vocation is to be happy with another kind of happiness, the happiness of love and self-sacrifice. And cost what it may, I will arrange poor Emile's happiness. She loves him so passionately, and so passionately repents. I will do all I can to arrange the match between them. If he is not rich, I will give her the means. I will ask my father and Andrew. I shall be so happy when she is his wife. She is so unfortunate, a stranger, alone, helpless. And oh God, how passionately she must love him if she would go so far as to forget herself. Perhaps I might have done the same," thought Princess Mary. And that concludes the reading of chapter 51 of War and Peace. I'll now follow that with my reflection on the same. A Year of War and Peace, Day 51. Princess Mary Bolkonsky, Stoic Sage. You'll be hard-pressed to find a more virtuous response to adversity in War and Peace than you do from Mary in this chapter. Here, she is ill-treated by the two most important people in her life. She responds with dignity, forgiveness, understanding, and magnanimity to both of them. We're talking, of course, about her father, old Prince Bolkonsky, and her companion, Mademoiselle Bourienne. Her father is the first to offend her. He calls her into his study to talk about the proposal of marriage. It shouldn't be surprising, given what we know about the old prince, that his quick irritability leads him to insult his daughter. This insult reduces her to tears. Meanwhile, in the conservatory, Mademoiselle Bourienne and Anatoly are hooking up. Princess Mary, leaving her father, happens upon them in a sensual embrace. Keep in mind, this is all within just a few hours of the end of the last chapter, wherein Mary lulled herself to sleep with reveries of a loving marriage to Anatoly. So it's not like catching him with her best friend doesn't sting. How does Princess Mary respond? Is it with vindictiveness? Does she add to the quantum of suffering in the household by lashing out at her father and Mademoiselle Bourienne? No. She reassures her father that he is the center of her life, and that she remains devoted to him. And then it's actually Mary who confronts Mademoiselle Bourienne. She strokes her hair and consoles her. She refuses Anatoly's proposal of marriage with calmness and without reporting his mischievous behavior. She also tells Mademoiselle Bourienne that she will do everything in her power to arrange a marriage between her and Anatoly, if that's what Madame Bourienne desires. Daily Meditation. As those who try to stand in thy way when thou art proceeding to right reason will not be able to turn thee aside from thy proper action, so neither let them drive thee from thy benevolent feelings toward them, but be on thy guard equally in matters both, not only in the matter of steady judgment and action, but also in the matter of gentleness towards those who try to hinder or otherwise trouble thee. For this also is a weakness, to be vexed at them, as well as to be diverted from thy course of action, and to give way through fear. For both are equally deserters from their post, the man who does it through fear, and the man who is alienated from him, who is by nature a kinsman and a friend. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. Alright, so that concludes my reading of and reflection on chapter 51. I hope you liked it. Thanks for listening. Remember that if you'd like to support me, you can do so either by purchasing the ebook, A Year of War and Peace, becoming a patron at patreon.com, or making a one-time donation at PayPal. The links to all that are below. Your support in this matter is greatly appreciated. Tomorrow we'll be reading and reflecting on chapter 52 of War and Peace. I hope you'll join me. Until then, take care of yourselves and others.